5-minute memory method. A lot of people spend a long time studying and still forget most of it. They reread the same page, highlight the same lines, and look over the same notes again and again. It feels productive while you are doing it, but a few hours later the material already feels weaker, and a few days later it starts disappearing. That is what makes studying so frustrating. The problem is not always that you did not spend enough time. Sometimes the real problem is that you used a method that felt familiar but did not force your brain to actually remember anything. This episode is about a much simpler approach. If you want to remember what you study, you need to stop spending all your time looking at the answer and start practicing bringing it back from memory. That is the basic idea behind this method, and it works because memory gets stronger when you make the brain retrieve something instead of just recognize it.
LifeBug 0.5. Looking at information feels like learning. This is where a lot of people get tricked. When you reread something, it starts to feel familiar. The sentence looks easier, the page feels less confusing, and you get the sense that you know it better. But familiarity is not the same thing as memory. The real test is simple. Can you bring the idea back without looking at it? That is where many study methods fall apart. They make you feel close to the material, but they do not train you to pull it out when you need it later. That is why people often think they understand something while they are looking at the page, but struggle the moment the page disappears. The brain has seen the information many times, but it has not practiced retrieving it. So the issue is not always effort. A lot of the time, it is method. If the study session is built around recognition instead of recall, it feels smoother in the moment, but the memory fades much faster afterward.
LifePatch 0.51. Close the page and pull it back. The first patch is very simple. After you read a short section, close the page and try to say it back in your own words. Not perfectly, not like a textbook, just enough to prove that the idea is actually in your head. This matters because the act of pulling something back from memory is what strengthens it. If you only keep looking at the answer, your brain does not have to do much work. But when you make yourself retrieve it, even imperfectly, the learning becomes more active. A good way to do this is to read one small chunk, look away, and ask yourself what the main point was. Then say it out loud, write it down, or explain it like you were teaching it to someone. That is already a better memory exercise than reading the same paragraph 5 more times.
LifePatch 0.52. Use short recall rounds instead of long review sessions. The second patch is about timing. A lot of people study as if memory gets stronger by staying in contact with the material for as long as possible. But memory often improves more when you come back to it in short recall rounds instead of one long passive session. That means it is usually better to spend 5 focused minutes trying to remember key ideas than 20 extra minutes staring at the same page while your attention gets weaker. So try this. Learn a small piece, step away from it, and then come back later and test yourself again. The point is not to make studying feel smooth. The point is to make memory work a little harder. That small struggle is useful. It tells you what is actually staying and what is already slipping, which gives you a much more honest picture of what you know.
LifePatch 0.53. Turn study time into question time. The third patch is to stop treating notes like something you only read and start turning them into questions. If your notes stay in statement form, you will usually slide back into passive review. But once you convert the material into questions, the whole study session changes. Now your brain has a job. It has to search, retrieve, and rebuild the answer. For example, instead of looking at a line and rereading it, ask, "What does this term mean? What are the 3 main causes?" Or, "How would I explain this idea simply?"
That change seems small, but it shifts you from exposure to retrieval. And that is usually the difference between something that feels familiar for an hour and something that stays with you much longer.
Closing. Remember by retrieving. That is the whole method. If you want to remember what you study, stop depending on familiarity and start practicing recall. Close the page and pull the idea back. Use short recall rounds instead of endless review. Turn your notes into questions so your brain has to retrieve the answer. That approach may feel a little harder in the moment, but that is exactly why it works better. The goal is not to make studying feel easy. The goal is to make memory stronger. And once you understand that difference, studying becomes much less about time and much more about method. You do not always need more hours. Sometimes you just need a better way to use the next 5 minutes.